Hey, welcome to Collective Soulversations, a podcast dedicated to exploring healing, health, and hope through inspiring stories and empowering discussions on spiritual wellness. In every episode, you can expect engaging conversations, inspiring stories, and practical advice. Become part of the journey towards healing and hope. Subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media for updates and community engagement. Share your stories and receive support on your wellness journey with Jodi and Leah. Together, let's heal, grow, and thrive. Welcome to Collective Soulversations.
Okay, welcome everybody to episode number 3. We have a very special guest with us today. We're super excited, super stoked that we have Cacey Scott in the house. Yay! We should add the applause, the background
We need to get
applause.
all that when we get our editing.
Yeah, for sure. So Leah and I are going to tag team Cacey. Cacey, welcome to our podcast. I hope you're comfortable.
Spiritual and pure way possible, people.
Right. So I'm going to just let you guys know a little bit about Cacey through my personal experience. And then Leah's going to share a little bit, and then we'll let Cacey jump in and have a word in. So you guys know that I am a follower of Anthony William, the medical medium. I have used the protocols from the Spirit of Compassion to help me heal in miraculous ways. And it just happened to be that on my journey of healing, when I was looking for supports, Cacey happened to be one of the guides, because he is a guide. He very much is a guide. Popped up on my path. And so Cacey and I had a session together, and it was at a time where I feel like I was, and I don't know, Cacey, if you remember much about when you have sessions with people, but I feel like it was at a time where I was like really still struggling with the whole emotional component of it, like the willpower to keep going, right? And I don't know about you guys, and I'm sure this is probably the same way, but my guides always bring people to me at the right time, in the right moment, for whatever it is that I need them for. And the cool thing about Cacey is that does he not only have a huge healing story, which we're going to talk to him about, which he had a lot of similar things that I had experienced as well. So he had firsthand experience with it. He was healing it and had healed so much of it. But he's also very, very empathic and sensitive, and very much also aware that he's on his spiritual path, his spiritual journey. And so he pulls all of that into Spirit, just calling them transmissions. So that's interesting. He pulls all of that in when he does sessions with clients. And so when we met, that was exactly what I needed at the time. I needed that like little bit of encouragement, that little bit of, I know it's hard. It's because we'll talk about this, but being on the medical medium protocols is not for the faint of heart. This is why so many people, don't continue with it or fall off of it. But thank God there are way more people that do stick with it and have healed tremendously with it. So I'm thankful for the part that Cacey played on my healing journey. And I'm excited here to kind of like pick his brain and find out some of his stuff and share him with you guys, because he needs to be shared, because he's a valuable tool for sure. Leah, what did you find out about Cacey when you were doing your little bit of investigative work?
So I have my own experience with the medical medium protocols. I am not nearly as emotionally forthright enough to follow them like you guys do. But I've been doing the whole phase 1 for a very, very long time. I do fall off regularly, so I'm kind of a 70-30 follower. But I know what I know about Cacey is just the realness of what your story has to offer to people. Because believe it or not, food brings up such massive emotions for people.
Right.
And so what Spirit's reminding me of right now is there's a huge emotional component to food and eating and socializing with food that we often come up against. And so, yeah, I'm just really excited. I have a lot of my own personal questions, Cacey, but we'll see if we get there. Okay.
That's awesome. Okay, so welcome, Cacey. Welcome, Cacey Scott, to the podcast. Now, we want to dive in first, and this is our big, we call it the main event question.
Mm.
We want to know how you were feeling, what you were experiencing when you were in like one of your deepest, darkest, hardest times. So whenever you're ready, share away.
I've been like starting off.
Well, first of all, thank you both for having me on. It's such a pleasure to be here and connect with you guys and your energy. And I love that question because in my terminology, which I'm sure you are both aware of it, we call it dark night of the soul.
Yes.
And the
Good
place
old
that
dark night of the soul.
the place that we go into to find ourselves. And it's unbeknownst to us when we first get there, what the hell is happening? And I've had plenty of them on my journey, but there's two, right? There's different levels to them, and I have two that are just beyond anything I've ever experienced, and the suffering was immeasurable. It was very severe. And the first one was my awakening into my higher self. And it skyrocketed me into just being completely self-aware. And it started when I was 30 years old. I was wanting to make better choices in my life. I'd spent my whole 20s drinking a lot of alcohol and partying and just goofing off, being a 20, all my 20s were just
being a normal 20-year-old.
Being a normal 20-year-old, in the world that we've grown up,
Right.
into, right? And there was no sense, I didn't have any sense of self, and it was just, it was alcohol and pizza and burgers and barbecues and snowboarding and wakeboarding and lots of soccer and working. No goals, no career-oriented path. And I was on an anxiety medication, an SSRI called paroxetine, aka Paxil.
Right.
And it's one of the more intense ones. Come to find out later, I found out the hard way.
Right.
And I was on it when I was 20. 21, I got on it. On my 21st birthday, I started getting panic attacks. I was in Vegas, right? Just all the drinking and
Right.
the
Yeah.
Red Bulls and
Just beating your
panic.
adrenal glands up, right?
Yeah. It was just running my body on adrenaline. My poor
Yeah.
liver was already so burdened, but started having panic attacks. Came home from weekend in Vegas, started working, had panic attacks at work. Just like wanted to run out.
So Cacey, tell us for you, because everybody experiences panic attacks differently, right?
Yeah.
What were your panic attacks like?
I felt like I was gonna die.
Right.
Like I was like, I'm dead. I am so dead. This is
Right.
it. Like I wanted to run out of my body. My tongue would start tingling up, and I'd get this surge that just feels like death. Like I wanted
It's so
to
funny
run.
that you say that because it was funny because I started my panic attacks around the 23 mark. Same idea, all the liver, the drinking, all that stuff. And I felt like I wanted to run out of my body. I love the way that you said that, because I felt like I needed, like, get me out of this.
Get me out of this. That's it. And I would leave work, like, because I wanted to run.
Yeah.
I was like, Mom, I need my mom. Like,
Right.
I needed safety. Like, it was just gnarly. And so I went to, they started happening more frequently. And I now know they were toxic heavy metals, right? All the alcohol, the drinking overburdened my liver, dropped metals, kicked up into my bloodstream. My body's dehydrated. My brain is shrinking up. It just kicks up those metals to create that panic attack. And so anyways, I go to the doctors, and he's like, okay, well, let's try you 10 milligrams of Paxil. Okay. Started it, I had no questions for him.
I
I'm
know,
like,
right?
anything to help me with this, right? Like, we have no way. I think that these doctors, right, have all the answers, and I'm a young kid at this age, and so I take it. It didn't work, so I went up to 20 milligrams, and it worked. I was on 20 milligrams all throughout my 20s. No anxiety, no panic attacks. Um, yeah, so it did work for 10 years, and a little quick pre-story is I did have some trauma around a sexual experience that created me into being more of a hypochondriac in high school.
Right.
So there was that trauma and that type of those tendencies of being a little fearful with things happening in my body. So
Right.
I did not sit well with anything. I did not know how to work through anything.
Good old health anxiety, right?
Health anxiety. Yeah, it was just so high. And I didn't have any, like, just me growing hair. Like, I was freaking out, like, as a young age. Like,
yeah.
So that was played. I know it plays a factor into everything going into my panic attacks. But once I hit 30, I was want to do better. My girlfriend at the time was like, "Do you need that medication anymore?" I'm like, probably not. It's been 10 years. Like,
Right.
I didn't remember what a panic attack felt like. And
Right.
I'm thinking I'm invincible. And so I started making all these changes to get better in my health, and from diet, better with my money, better with my career, tapering off the medication too quickly after binge drinking, blacking out every weekend for 10 years on this medication where they said maybe 2 beers, that's it. I'm like,
Right.
drink a 30 pack a weekend. Like,
Right.
and so this I started getting symptoms. I'm going through a breakup at the time too. So super heavy, no support. And I started getting symptoms of dark, irrational thoughts,
Right.
brain fog, where I couldn't really remember anything. I've always had low grade brain fog my whole life, and I didn't know it.
Mhm.
But I couldn't remember much, and then it started to turn into dark images where it slowly progressed over just like a month period, and it slowly progressed where I would literally see people dying right in front of me, their heads being cut off, like being like in this, like, all happening in my head. And I knew it wasn't real, but it's like, it was just, what the heck is going on with me? I had no focus at work. It was so severe. I was so frightened by it. All of my past trauma comes up, no tools, no idea how to work through this, scared, just so scared, and on adrenaline all day long. And this was 24/7. There was no break. I could not watch a movie to get out of my head. My mind was spinning 24/7.
Right.
Coming off this medication, my brain was severely damaged by it. And
did you go back to the doctor?
I did. And well, he says too, like, normally things get twice as bad when you come off of it. Like, I know. Yeah, I know now why. Like, I mean, I should have done like 1 to 2 year taper off of it. But at the same time, I'm going through a breakup, and I'm making I stopped drinking, and I was slowing down on coffee, and I was changing my diet, but it's still eating so high fat, eating no carbs. So my brain was just having no support, right? The brain runs on glucose, and I was eating high fat, high meat,
right,
while cutting out
What
carbs.
do you mean? You mean keto's not good for you? No, sorry.
Yeah, right? Like, exactly. And so this was progressing pretty quickly. And after just a month of that happening, all of June, then July, I'm like, I couldn't even work because I was not performing in my job.
Yeah.
And I was getting so exhausted too. I couldn't barely get out of bed. I could not get out of bed. It was a struggle. And I'm a strong-willed person, so I had to force myself up to go. And I'm so exhausted at work, making mistakes. And so I go on medical leave, FMLA Act. And during this time period, my brother-in-law was a teacher. He's on summer break, and I spent working out in the gym, right? And he was like a coach. He was helping me through it. And so the only thing I could do is work out, and I would work out. And that would
And
help
how did that
me.
make you feel? Better though? Was that making you feel better, or?
It was just a mask. I mean, it was temporary.
Absolutely.
Like, it was a distraction from the chaos, the pure chaos.
Right.
It's what I love to do. And on the outside, I look super ripped, and on the inside, it was just absolute chaos. And
so do you think part of that was the adrenaline addiction that we become addicted to, where that working out at the gym obviously pumped the adrenaline through and your brain having that addiction to it, right? And of course, all of the pathogens in your body saying, feed me, feed me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was absolutely an addiction, and I was trying to find something to just help me distract myself
Right.
from what was happening in my head, because it was 24/7. There was no
Yeah.
break.
Yeah.
And it was just getting worse. I'd be with my nieces and nephews, and I'd see them dying, and I was so reactive and resistant to it.
Wow.
I wasn't meditating or doing anything. I didn't know how to do anything, and I was reading. There were some self-help books, like I was reading The Universe Has Your Back and The Four Agreements, but I couldn't remember much, and I was so distracted and so fearful. And
Right.
Right.
one day, I did that for about 30 days, like working out every day with him. And one day, and this, meanwhile, I'm going to doctors and trying to find help, and there's nothing. There's nothing that they're able to do. And one day after a workout, I did some like really heavy sprints, like intensely.
Right.
And 2 hours later, I was in Kohl's doing some, shopping therapy, and I felt this severe weakness come over my body. I mean, this heavy weakness, and I I knew something went wrong. Like something went
Right.
terribly wrong in my body,
Yeah.
and I started to get really weak, and I couldn't work out anymore. There goes the workout. There goes the physical now.
Right.
A virus just flared up. I didn't know that at the time,
Right. You
and
just thought something's wrong. This is not
something's wrong.
normal.
Yeah, and this
Yeah.
is where I started to go deeper into doctors, and I found a nutritionist, and she recommended that starting in the morning I have chicken and avocados for breakfast, and I'm like, all right,
Just what
okay,
your liver needed, right?
right, just what I needed. So I ate this meal, and right after I ate it, I started doing yoga, and I stood up, and my heart rate shot up to 180 beats a minute.
Right.
My brain flooded with more chaos, and I'm like, this is it. I'm about to die. Mom, call 911.
Right.
And I went to the hospital, and they couldn't find anything wrong, but my heart rate kept going. It would come back down and then it would go back up, like
Right.
super high. So they didn't know what was happening, and they took
Yeah.
all these tests.
Yeah. The good
And
old adrenaline spikes. Yeah, those are so
they were
much
huge.
fun.
Yeah, because my
Yeah.
blood was so filled with so
Yeah.
much fat and gunk.
Yeah.
My heart couldn't move it through the liver, so the adrenaline would spike to push
Yes.
it through my body. That's how bad it was.
Right.
But the fear of what I was experiencing, this is where it turned into my dark night of the soul. From that moment, for the
Right.
next 3.5 to 4 months, I thought I was going to die every day. I
Right. So
lived
you
in my,
instantly got PTSD. You
well,
had
and it kept
were having
happening too.
yeah.
I was,
Right. And you're reliving it. Not only did you have PTSD, but you were reliving the experiences over and over again.
reliving that experience over and over again, and the symptoms that I had were, so I could have one thought, and that would trigger my heartbeat into going super high again, just off my
Right.
thought. My adrenal glands were so shot. This
Right.
happens to people with adrenal insufficiency.
Yeah.
And my adrenals were just completely shot, and I was sleeping 1 to 2 hours a night.
Right.
And I'd feel like acid in my body, and I was so weak, and I would go to my mom, like, I don't know if I'm going to make it through the night.
Right.
And
Did you go through a period, because I know this happened to me when I was at like my worst, nighttime became very scary. Like I can remember.
Oh, I just lost sound.
I think we lost
Oh,
her.
there we go.
Yeah.
I can remember at nighttime going to bed and being terrified. Like, is this going to be the night that I don't wake up? Is this going to be is my heart going to stop? Is this going to be right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember when I had my neurological issues. So this would have been long before I had any sort of awakening or ascension or anything like that. It just kind of hit me out of nowhere. It was 2016, I think. And it was a Saturday night, and I remember we had come home from dinner, and all of a sudden I didn't know what had happened, but the floor became the ceiling and the ceiling became the floor. And then I was on this constant tilt-a-whirl for basically the next 3 months.
Nice.
Right?
The world of vertigo. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And at the time, I had no idea about, there was nobody talking to me about food or anything like that. But what I noticed was that movement made it better. So I started looking into what that meant and found my own way to a vestibular therapist and did a lot of really hard therapy to be able to sort of write all of that. But as you're talking now, I'm realizing that there's probably a lot more to that than what I realized, like the whole experience of the flares and the pathogens and things like that. So I'm wondering how many people realize that neurological stuff is a big part of what like food and supplements actually can affect, because neurological things are the things that most people don't understand. Like I
Oh,
still to this day don't
absolutely.
understand.
Yeah.
Oh
In
yeah,
case
if you're spinning like that for 3 months straight, like that's definitely coming from neurotoxins from a virus.
Yeah.
Right. And I
Yeah.
also have a history with paroxetine as well. So there's all
Mm,
of that. So you know what, Cacey, there's always reasons for people coming on the show.
absolutely, absolutely. It's so
Okay.
just divinely guided. And I loved how Jodi was talking about, how our paths get connected, right? And that you feel it's so divinely guided with your clients. It's once I started doing that, I started reaching out to source, and just so I felt like I was gonna sneeze. It was like a very early sign, and it distracted me. I'm shutting it down. I'm shutting
But
it
the
down.
synchronicities though,
And
right? And I wanted to ask you, so you and I know, and now, because of course it's really hard when you're on your healing journey, and especially when you've got the neurological stuff going on, and especially when your brain's filled with heavy metals and viruses, and because your ability to have clarity on things is so tough.
Oh
Like
my
you are
gosh.
literally just living in the cycle of fear,
mhm.
which is adrenaline, and cortisol, which is then feeding all the pathogens. So it's like this
Mhm.
vicious cycle that you kind of never get off of. But I feel like, we call this an awakening. And my health crisis, my health anxiety, all of that is awakening for me, right? These are things that I'm supposed to be growing through, learning through, teaching through. And Casey, do you think that one of the things on your awakening path was the relationship with doctors and authority, and who you trust, and who you allow to be your guides? Do you think that came into play for you?
Yeah, no, absolutely, it did. And so that me being in that very fearful state for
Mhm.
that long with those types of symptoms, I reached a point, and it was all divinely led. I reached a point where my I was like, I can't go on anymore. Like I haven't died yet. So
Mhm.
I have to
Something's
face,
keeping me alive.
like something is like keeping me alive, right?
Right.
And I started praying to God, and like I'll start going to church. I didn't know anything
Right.
about right too much about spirituality, but like I promise I'll start going to church. Like I
Right.
want to live, like I want
Right.
to do that, and
Yeah.
I started watching videos of miracles, like,
Right.
like
Yeah.
learning about the power of belief, and it started planting seeds, and I'm like, I have to start facing this. So I grabbed a pen, and I went out in my backyard, and I grabbed a journal, and I started journaling. Like I feel like I'm gonna die. Like I'm not sure if I am. I'd be crying, bawling, but like I'm
Yeah.
like I can get through this. Like I don't know what's gonna happen, but I started to face it, and leaning on that higher power a little bit more. But it was just my courage to start facing that. And
Right.
ever since that moment, it's everything started to shift. Everything
Right.
started to shift for me, and I started to feel a little bit better. I started
Right.
to feel a little bit better, and that was all I needed to then get back to doctors. And I started reaching out to God every day, right? Guide me to, I would specifically say, guide me to what I need to do, to see, to
Yeah.
hear, in order for me to heal, not just to help me, like guide me through this, because
Mhm.
I prayed for help before that, right? That's not how it works. Like, and so
Right.
it was a shift that I needed to make. And being super courageous and stepping out into the unknown is what my main focus was. And I read this book called The Surrender Experiment, and it is starting to teach me, and it all really resonated with me. It was really these books I had that were given to me prior to me going
that you
through
hadn't
that,
read yet.
Yeah.
that I started dabbling into, and I'm like,
Right.
it all made sense. But the source was pushing me, because my biggest trauma was fear of things happening in my body, health things, right? So I was pushed into that darkness where I had no choice but to face death, like to face it head on. And so I did, and that just leveled me up so much to not really be scared of much. And that's when then I started diving into the doctor scenes, and I was able to see more clearly now with less fear around what I was going through, that they were able to do testings, and I got diagnosed with Lyme disease. I got diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome. It was just kind of like a crapshoot, and what was happening. The Epstein-Barr virus test did come back positive, which is what was chronic fatigue syndrome. So that was accurate, but it's not always accurate with that virus. And my fiance, or my wife now, back in 2017, gave me this book called Life Changing Foods. And when I was going through that chaos, I was looking into it. I was trying the foods, like, is it working? Is it working? Like,
trying everything.
Why am I not better? Like, it says it does this, and that. And so I didn't get any results. But I remember listening to a podcast talking about Epstein-Barr, and I had to go through everything I went through. And then I was starting to connect the dots to my spiritual path and seeing the synchronicities happening. And once I got that test back for Epstein-Barr, I remembered I have that book, and I'm like, this is all on purpose. I know how to heal. Like, I know what I need. I went home, opened the book, and it was game over. After it was medical medium ever since. It was
the game changer for you.
It was the game changer for me. And
it's
it was
funny
all
when you were talking, because Spirit was just saying that we have what they call the breaking point, and you had to reach your breaking point. It's funny because I'm watching this show called The Lioness, and it's all about these CIA agents. And so they have these CIA agents, and they have a special operation that they're putting them into, and they have to literally put them in scenarios where they're pushed to their breaking point, like literally beaten, and to the point where it's horrific. And when you were talking, they were just showing me, like, that's where they need us to go, because it's like this cellular memory needs to break from us and expand, right? And we have to, in order to be able to, be a good guide, like, a good guide for other people, we need to have been in the battlefield at the worst possible place to be able to say, I know how you feel when you're there, because I had it. I was there. I was there with you. We were all in that dark night of the soul, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's how we're able to really relate with other people and understand them from a compassionate point of view, but also like, hey, like, I know how to help you through this. Like, I've been through it. I see you.
And Cacey, do you consider yourself an empath? This is a question Leah and I've talked about.
And I think we'll be asking a lot of our guests that.
No, I mean, it's a great question. I would say not in the general terms of empath, where the feeling is overbearing for me. I just, ever since that moment, I started living through my heart in everything I do. So I do feel, but I know what to do with that feeling. It's more of an empowered compassion and empowered loving way, where I feel and I want to help and support, but people's energies, no matter what it is, do not affect me. I live in my own light. I create my own energy. Right.
And that's awesome. And that's, I think we talked about this. There's such a spectrum for the empath, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just very much like the autistic spectrum. There's like such a spectrum on it, but I think there are like key points to it. And I feel like some of the experiences that you had, like even though, the hallucinations, the dark visions, all of that stuff, I feel like that's very much part of the empath awakening. It's just awakening your senses. So for you, it was horrific because you were seeing dark stuff and you were seeing people dying and you were seeing all that. But from a sensory experience, it was actually heightening those things for you.
It
And
was
now
growing
you're
my
able,
light.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Casey, can I ask a couple of questions? So, just for our listeners who maybe don't have the same amount of information around medical medium protocols and actually who Anthony Williams is and all of that, um, can you talk a little bit about those early days of discovery when you got life-changing foods and when you started to realize that, oh, this is what I need?
Hmm.
What were some of those early struggles? Because I know for myself, right? My journey
Hmm.
started with a very similar story. My team dragged me up through the emotional energy, mental healing. And with
Hmm.
that came a lot of physical healing, right? Because that's
Hmm.
part of my purpose to then do my work. But every time I went to start, and I know lots of people are like this with the medical medium protocols, um, there is something in that that's very challenging. So can you talk about the mental part of that?
Yeah, and there's it's a very good question because there's a lot of moving components
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
to fully transforming when you have chronic symptoms, and then to fully transforming your diet or the foods that are bringing you comfort, to cleansing your body and eating these healing foods. It's not only is there confusion, there's so much misinformation around diet, and that confuses the crap out of
Oh
people.
my
And
gosh,
you have your
totally.
doctors telling you, eat keto, eat paleo, eat vegan, right? All these
Mhm.
things, and you go to different
Lots
doctors
and
and like,
lots of fish, they tell
right,
you,
all
My
right?
naturopath told me to, because of my adrenal fatigue, eat more potato chips because the salt will help you.
Oh my goodness.
yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
talking about. And I read this book. I was reading this adrenal health book, and I was saying, we need meat, right,
Right.
and a lot of meat, and then some things will stick in your. I thought, and I've always been a meat eater, and I thought I needed meat. Like I was convinced I needed the meat for my adrenals, and I was
Right.
focusing on my adrenals. I was convinced I needed it. Meanwhile, it was severely the thick fat was
No.
overburdening my liver and filling my bloodstream where my body can't even detoxify, draining my adrenals further.
Hmm.
And uh this led to that heart racing so much because of the adrenaline release. So finding that, like, it was the spiritual component of, I needed to learn everything that didn't work so
Right.
that when I did find what was work, I can fully believe it and
Right.
Yeah,
fully be on board with
absolutely
it.
get that.
And that's
Yes.
and so it's really, so the universe works in the most magical ways. Like there's nothing that can't be undone. Like there's always a solution. And so it's just when you start surrendering, right? And through everything, I was convinced I needed meat, and there was nothing that was going to unconvince me until I took a blood test for your diet. Like it was a blood test diet
Right.
thing, and I was A positive, and it said the best thing was plant based, right? And I immediately, my belief shifted in a second, which I do not believe that now. I don't believe in the blood type diet at all. It's not true. But
Right.
for me, just to get off of meat, I
It was
I
that little push in the
That
right
little
direction that you
push you
needed.
that's all I
needed.
needed,
Yeah.
and I went
Yeah.
plant based, and I immediately started eating a bunch of salads, a bunch of fruits, and I've never eaten fruits in my life really, and
Right.
I was loving it. I was really enjoying it, and my body started to cleanse. It started to move things out, and I started to feel fluish. My body was starting to release, and I had severe constipation for the first first half of my life, all for
Right.
25 years, like going once every 4 days. And
Right.
Mhm.
1 week after being plant-based, I started going to the bath, pooping every day, once a
I
day.
know it, and people don't
Like,
understand the whole cleanup of the body and how, like, I can remember back in the day when I had my acupuncture practice and my patients, And, you would get people, constipation was a common complaint, and they would sit there and they would say to you, well, I have maybe one bowel movement a week.
Right. Yeah.
And the funny
And
thing
then
about it, though, is it would be those people that would be coming to me more importantly for the facial acupuncture because they wanted to get rid of their wrinkles on their forehead. But they didn't think that that was connected to their body filling up with toxins because they weren't eliminating regularly, right?
Oh my God. People are filled with pounds and pounds of food and toxins.
Yes.
Right. It's even people pooping just once a day, right? It's not enough. Like we
Right.
eat way more food. We should be going after, 2 to 3 times a day,
Okay.
about an
That's
hour to 2 after we eat. We should be eliminating. That's a healthy digestive system.
So one
Yeah,
of
and
the
it's hard.
questions
So, and
I
I'm
have
sure
for
you.
both of you. Oh, sorry, Jodi.
Oh, no,
One of the
go ahead,
questions
Lee.
I have for both of you is I actually feel like I do so much better eating a lot less than we are told we're supposed to. Like I know my body does much better with less food regularly, but less. But the regularly part I'm still not so good at. So what do you, but when I look at the medical medium protocols, it's still set up as, breakfast snack, lunch snack, dinner snack.
Mhm.
To me, for me, that it's a lot of food.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I can say for me, I don't know if Casey you've experienced this, but when I first started doing the protocols, to me it was also like because I was like a 3 meals a day girl, like very, no
Mhm.
snacks in between, no like it was just, and big gaps between the timing of eating, which you and I we all know now that does not help your adrenal glands when you're trying to heal your adrenal glands. But I also reached a place in the beginning of it where I felt like I can't get all this into me. Like I'm having a hard time getting so it's
Mhm.
definitely a mind over matter thing, right? Because and Casey can talk about this, but when your focus is on healing food, so meaning we don't put any fillers into our body. So we're not filling with rice, we're not filling with pasta, we're not filling with anything like that. It's just fruits and vegetables. It's kind of like, the joke they'd say when you go out for Chinese food, you eat Chinese food and then an hour later you're hungry. It's the same idea with fruits and vegetables is like you
Right.
have to eat them in quantity in order
To
to
get
be
full
able
to
to,
begin with.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, that's well said. And everybody is different on how much. I've always been an extremely large eater, and so I need large portions. Depends how much your body, energy your body's using, the size of your stomach. So the whole calorie thing, is not a good like. Oh, you should have 2,000 calories a day. You should have 25.
Right.
It's not a good way to measure how much you should be eating, and it all depends too on what your intentions are with your food and your healing. Because are you healing just to be nutritious, or are
Right.
are you aware that you have toxins and you want to get them all out of you and you want to heal? That means you need
Right.
to cleanse, right? So
Right. Right.
and what Jodi was saying too, which was great, if you're eating meat or gluten-free pastas or rice, these things are going to fill you up a lot quicker, and you don't have room then for what your body truly needs, like fruits and vegetables. So
Mhm.
normally what I find is that when people go fully fruits and vegetables, they're hungry, right? Because we're all grew up
I
eating.
don't know if that's a selling point for people. So
Yeah. Well, but I'm not trying to sell them.
no,
It's
I'm
it's
just kidding. I'm
difficult, right?
totally kidding.
No, but it's true though. Like
Yeah.
people need to know that it's not convenient, right? You're not going for convenient. You're going for to cleanse this body. It's a temple that's become toxic. We need the earth. We need the fruits and vegetables that grow
Yeah,
from earth that we
absolutely.
were meant to live on.
Right.
And it's once you get into the flow of it and you value what you put into your body, then it really doesn't have to be too hard. You eat your meals, big meal for breakfast, big meal for lunch, big meal for dinner, and then you just snack on fruit in between. That's the best way to start, right? With fruits and
Mhm.
vegetables. And it
Yeah.
doesn't need to be more complicated that. And someone like you, Leah, listening to your body, right? When let's say you have a smoothie and you're full, you're topped off, well, that's fine. You don't have to then force yourself to drink more,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? It's just listening, tuning in. Am I full? Right? It's the most purest way of doing what's best for your body. And then,
And
Yeah.
What's the process like when the pathogens die off? Let's talk a little bit
Oh,
about
that's
that,
fun
because
times,
those
right,
are
Casey?
not fun. But if you don't believe, you are going to start believing when
I
those
think,
buggers start,
yeah,
right?
I think when I went to come and see Casey, it was at one of those times where like because I was like an all in, like literally, I was like, I need to get better. I am dying. I feel like I'm dying. You tell me what to do and I will do it. And so I was like on every single supplement. I was on every, I was doing like everything. And I'm telling you, when you are killing off that many pathogens at once, they don't like it very much, right, Casey?
So
Yeah.
what happens?
Yeah. They don't like it. So when you eat a fruit and a vegetable or an herb or these supplements that are highly antiviral, highly antibacterial, you'll start to kill them off and strengthen your immune system to kill them off. And if you get on a bunch of antivirals, they're going to attack the virus, and the virus will then explode, right? It explodes, it kills it off. And there's a lot of the virus. It's not like just, okay, there's just one
Yeah.
virus,
Layers and layers of it, right? In our organs
cell,
and
right? There's not just one viral
yeah.
cell,
Yeah.
right? There's a lot of viral cells. And so
And
then
can you
it'll,
just be specific for our audience when you talk about a virus? What
yeah.
are we talking about?
So we're talking about most people are dealing with the Epstein-Barr virus, which one or two or three different strains out of 60, over 60 different strains. There's 4 different stages. When you really start to get continuous chronic symptoms, whether that be neurological, digestive, endocrine, skin, you're at stage 4, right? Where it's that chronic symptom stage. And then there's six different groups that give a severity of that strain. So all of them can be killed off. Doesn't matter what stage, what group it is. So that's the main reason. But there is non-rashing shingles virus that also causes neurological. There's
and that's a lot of nerve pain too, right? The shingles virus is responsible for the jaw pain, the head.
Yeah, a lot in the face, trigeminal nerve.
Yeah.
Throughout the face, in the shoulder, frozen shoulder, neck pain.
So people can have these viruses then, and I'm just going to talk from a place because a lot of our listeners may not, this will be the first time they're even experiencing any of this talk, right? So I want to keep it where they understand it. So they could have these viruses, pick them up, whether it's through a cold, whether it's through whatever, and not even know it. And that is what's actually at the root of all of their chronic inflammatory, whatever the issues are that they're dealing with. That's what we're saying here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I just wanted everybody to get that
almost
clear.
almost everyone on the planet has this virus in their body. These viruses in their body, because they were created in labs in the early 1900s. They were grown, right, in labs, right, by the evildoers on the planet, and they were fed eggs and gluten and dairy that are not antiviral, antibacterial, and then they were spread throughout the collective, and now they're in. Doesn't mean that somebody's going to get chronic symptoms, but cancer,
many
right?
of us are, though. Let's just be honest. Many of us are. And one of the things that I'm really glad you're here to talk about is that, so I believe that spirit will bring us our clients based on our own experiences. So I get a lot of clients who are single moms who have worked themselves to the bone, where food has been whatever they can get on the table and into their bodies when they're rushing. Where do they start? Like when they're like, listen, I can't, Cacey, I can't do this. Like I don't even have the energy to do this because I have XYZ. What's the one thing you could say, start here?
Well, that if they're in that place and they're having symptoms, like they need many of them are. So then that means there needs to be a serious conversation about just overall healing and what they value. Getting their values in line is number one always. But
it's
having
funny,
that
that's
being
what spirit often brings to them in their readings, is that's actually a session where they help them tease out what it is that their next step needs to be. And often you're very right, they have to get to the point where they value their health above everything, and then that's a self-worth lesson. So,
absolutely right. So I think we can all agree on that. That is number one for sure. But if we're talking just food wise and drink wise, it's just the morning time, right? If that first step, we're always talking about the morning time because it's, when you're in that place, it can be very overwhelming. That's what, because stress adrenaline is the number one thing that it feeds viruses more than anything else, is acidic adrenaline coming from stress and overwhelmment and fear and worry.
And that's what a lot of people don't realize too, is though, so just kind of going back to the viruses and this is probably one thing I would offer advice about, because it was a kind of like a back step that I took, was I tried to like focus in on what virus is this? Is this a shingles? This is Epstein-Barr? Is it blah, blah, like, is it the herpes? Is it from? And the truth is, it doesn't matter which one it is, because we attack them with the same tools. We don't have to go in. There's not a different ammunition for each one, because they have the same kind of frequency, which is
I was
not
just
good for
about to
us.
say that. I was just about to say the energetic sequence behind all of
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
was
For the
created
for the
to
most
attack
part-
the human body. So
For the most part, they're because there is specific protocols, and there is different herbs for, like shingles and Epstein-Barr virus. But for the most part, the ones they'll overlap, and they will still, their antiviral will start to attack the virus, right? But the majority of it is pretty much the same. But the morning so the morning time is what I was saying, is like lemon, first thing in the morning you wake up, get lemon water in your body, get
Help
your liver
out, right?
hydrated, get your liver flushing.
Now, lemon, does it need to be organic lemon? What kind of water? People are going to ask these questions.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's just regular filtered water. Definitely stay away from tap water. Stay away from plastic water bottles unless it's Fiji. That one is a better spring water. Always spring water, or filtered. Get a good filter. Berkey filter, water filter is great. You can get it on Amazon. And then lemons or limes, they do not have to be organic. If you can afford it and have access to organic, it's always best to buy organic. But I always say that the thick skinned fruits where you're not eating them, right? It's not like critical. I never have, and I've healed fine. You give it a little wash, right, to rinse off, little soap and water, rinse off any pesticides on the outside. You cut the lemon, and it's a half a lemon per 16 ounces of water. 32 is best for one lemon, or you can do 2 limes, right? Because they're a little bit smaller. And that's first thing in the morning.
And that's where these mason jars come in, right? I think they made the mason jars all for the MM followers, right?
I know.
I love my mason jars.
Everyone's got the mason jars. My wife goes through. I'm like, babe, you're down to 2 mason jars. We bought a pack of 12. There's 2 left. It's almost time to get new ones, because she breaks them and
I know, yeah,
they disappear.
Yeah.
So the purpose.
So we do the lemon water, and then
to know the lemon water. The purpose of that is for what? And I know it's liver related. So why don't we talk
so we want to
about that
hydrate the water, right? The minerals have been stripped from our water in the processing of disinfecting and all the chlorine in them, right? The minerals are stripped from our water. Unless you're drinking high mountain spring water, you're not getting any nutrition or minerals anymore from our water. So lemon is going to activate that water, or lime, right? It's living fluid from the earth and nutrients that is going to activate that water, and it's going to start to hydrate the bloodstream on the cellular level and flush the liver, right? That's what it's going to start to do. Lemon water is like a trash pickup service. It comes, it picks up the trash and moves it along to where it needs to go. And that's what it does. And so
is temperature important? Spirit is just reminding me of these.
Yeah.
Temperature. Does temperature matter?
Room temperature warmer. You don't want cold right away in the morning. You don't want cold, because it's just a little harder on the system. Room temperature is perfect. If you want to do it a little warmer and add a little honey and ginger to that, excellent.
That's what I got right now in my mug, actually.
That's amazing. Lemon honey ginger is my favorite.
Okay, thank you for taking the time to explain all of that, because I think sometimes when we get in the spiritual world, we forget that everybody's on a different path. So we have some listeners that probably are like right in there like Jodi and are able to like totally get in the conversation. And then we're going to have others that don't understand even what a medical medium is. So thank you for taking the time to just explain that, because I think that the understanding of both the viruses and then the buildup of things in your liver being the two main things that I understand to be like critical to our health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The critical component is the liver. It is the liver. Back to what I was saying is that not everyone is going to get chronic symptoms nowadays, and where we're heading, most people are, for spiritual
Obviously.
reasons, for their growth and their transition for the new earth, and to integrate the self, because you grow
Right.
through challenges, but also because their livers are just tapped out with poisons and toxins. So a lot of people will get symptoms, but people who are born with strong livers have the ability to methylate nutrients better and detoxify more efficiently. So, there's people that, right, that gone their whole life, right, with no symptoms, right, no problems, and it's because of their liver strength. So
Right.
that's what it's all about. The stronger the liver, the more it can detoxify, the more it can regulate glucose levels and nutrients to your cells, balance hormones. The liver is that's why Medical Medium wrote the book Liver Rescue. Like, it's
Right.
your
It's
godsend.
the
It's the
king of our
protector of the
organs.
body.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
for
it's
sure.
it's the holy grail. And so
Right. Yeah. And people should know too, though, this is important, especially when you're on your healing path, right? So everything is intertwined. So the physical, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, it's all. And so you'll find that we all have the viruses. All have them. They're inherited. We actually get them from, our
Our
lineage,
parents,
from
yeah.
our, right?
And they were
They're passed
made
down.
for that. They were
yep.
made to be created, to be passed through all of us, right? So
Absolutely. And so people should know that, because it's hard for it to wrap your mind around it. And this was big for me, and I needed to know this. What's the cause of it? Like, what's causing me to be sick like this? And of course, none of the doctors go into that, but having that understanding that, okay, so all of these, and this, I'm just, in case he can give us his view on this, but for me, the understanding of, okay, all of these pathogens, the viruses, the heavy metals, the toxins, everything, for me, I colored my hair for years and years and years and years. I wore full makeup for years and years and years and years. I had a lot of toxins in my body and especially in my brain. That's where my stuff was. But the understanding that for the majority of it, and people need to understand this so much on their healing journey, your body's always trying to heal, always, always, always trying to keep you alive. And what will happen is you can be coasting along, and then all of a sudden you have a stressor in a relationship, in a job, in a financial, whatever it is. And it can be that stressor that then triggers the activation of all of the pathogens in your body. So it's not uncommon. And it's probably, in case you can tell us with the clients you see, that most people reach a tipping point from like one thing. It could be one thing that then, lowers their immune system. All the pathogens reawaken in their body that their immune system was keeping down, right? And then all of a sudden you've got this, party going on that you did not want to be invited to.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's look at it in a very simple way to understand it. It's your liver is like a trash can filling up. That's it. So as soon as that trash can gets to the top, it just takes one more piece of trash, right? Before
Right.
before it overflows. Right. That's how the liver is. It gets to a tipping point. And
Right.
as soon as that tipping point happens, the liver, let's say you go through a loss, whether that's a relationship breakup or a loss of a loved one, that's
Right.
very hard on the immune system. There's a lot of acidic adrenaline around that. And the liver has to process out all your hormones, all adrenaline release. And when it does that, if it's at that tipping point, it's going to drop the virus into your body.
Right.
And the adrenaline also burns through nutrients, very easily. And so that virus, then your body's all those toxins are there. They're in everybody. Like
Mhm.
they're not, if you've grown up on Earth, you can't possibly have
Exactly.
avoided them. And
Exactly.
unless you've been eating a pure fruit and vegetable diet from like protecting yourself from within. Right. So
But then
you can't,
also had no stress and no stressors and no.
right, exactly, right. That's
No, yeah,
exactly
you were
that's
never
exactly it.
injected with
You
any of
definitely would not be a human being.
Right, on growing up on Earth School that
Side of a
we
mountain.
have here, but that is where we are heading, right, into
Right.
creating. there's so many people that are awakened now to all the toxins, and they're avoiding it. And their house products and their foods and their self-care products, right? You can't avoid them, but that's where people are going to want to know, like, why, how do we become so toxic, right?
Right. Well,
It's
things you don't even think about. So for me, like I was, on this spiritual path I was lighting incense in my office, like all the time, these incenses, which are like chemicals and perfumes and right, like your body can only handle so much of that
Mhm.
without doing the cleanse, without cleaning it. You can't, you reach a tipping point quick.
And that's, people are going to be like, well, isn't our liver supposed to filter that out and stuff? It's like, yes, if it's extremely strong and you're not eating, loads of fat,
Really fat,
because
Right.
fat is like, it's like, let's pretend you have a water pipe and a water filter, and that water filter is filtering the water through that, and there's debris in it. The water filter is able to pick it up and hold on to it, but let's pretend there's a bunch of mud that gets into that water, right? And that's gonna get into the water filter and just clog it right on up. So that's all of our overt fats that we eat, from meat to the cheeses to
How about the oils?
the
How about
oils.
that was
Yeah,
tough for me and for
the
anybody
oils.
that's
Yeah,
doing right? Like any processed stuff has canola oil in it, vegetable oil in it,
yeah.
right?
And we
That's
all be that's that clogs it. All those things are huge irritants to the digestive lining too, and it breaks the body down, right? It makes the body weak and susceptible to disease, and just becomes an acidic environment on the inside. I always tell people, just imagine a river, like a high mountain spring river that is just flowing beautiful and clean through the earth. And then let's say there's a huge rainstorm and landslide. Now you have this whole muddy debris, like trees and everything coming down into that river, and it gets thick. That river is thick and slow, and there's debris in it now flowing. That's what people's bloodstreams look like,
right.
right? And it should look like a high mountain spring river.
But it's a
And
swamp.
so people will
Yeah.
come and say, but my doctor checks my blood all the time. So explain why that's not something that this is not something that our typical medical community is going to have consensus about. And I'm saying that in a very gentle way.
Yeah.
So people, when people talk, you talk about thick blood and you talk
Yeah.
about, and people say, but I get my blood checked all the time, it's fine. So explain how it's not what you're talking about.
Well, first of all, we live in the corrupt medical system that doesn't truly, like, it's a money making machine is what it
Absolutely.
is. And
Right.
it's not that there's a lot of really good doctors who do care, but it's the schooling and what they were trained to look at test results with the organ function to say, this is how your organ is functioning, this is the medication you need, right, to help that. Now,
Yeah.
even
The
with
limited teaching by the system, right? Their system that's set
the,
up to
it's
teach
the
them
system.
is like, yeah.
And when you follow
Yeah.
who created the system, then you can understand the energy behind everything that we're struggling with physically in the medical
Yes.
system, in the
Yes.
pharmacology system. But let's not go too far down there.
Yeah, we won't
because
go
we've
down
only
there,
got
because
like
that we'll be
25
here
more
for
minutes.
hours.
We could do a
And
whole
talk
other
about
episode
what
on
you were
that,
talking
right?
about, I think was really important. Our medical
Yeah.
doctors have a completely different mindset, and yet
Yeah.
we keep going back to them asking for help. Well,
Yeah.
that's the definition of insanity, right? You're going back and you're doing the same thing over and over again. And our doctors, they don't know. They're not doing this on purpose. I really want to presume positive intent, right?
Absolutely.
It
Yeah.
is just the
Well, and
way
a big part of that is because they're sick too.
they will.
That's I
Exactly.
started to
It's the
discover that, and
system.
especially this past year and a half with my mom and having her with cancer, and seeing a million doctors because she was in the system, and like sitting across from these people in these white coats, and me thinking, oh my God, like you're not well. You are not well.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're not living the healing lifestyle, and it's and the testing that they give, these things are so toxins, they're microscopic, and
Right.
we're large. Like, it gets buried deep into our organs, where the testing can't detect that, or it gets
Right.
into our muscles, our tissues,
because they're just doing blood tests, right? It's not like
ourselves.
they're doing biopsies on all of our organs.
And they don't even realize that they're supposed to be looking for it to begin with. Let's just be honest. Like, it's not
That's
like
another,
they even realize that this is what they're looking for. So even if we did have a proper test, they wouldn't even realize that's what we're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we're talking about pathogens, these herpetic viruses, the Epstein-Barr virus, shingles virus, and there's some other ones that they also hide out in your organs too. They can be hiding out there, and they're hard to detect. So not even if it's in their bloodstream, sometimes it's still not detectable. So we need to stop thinking that these tests are literally everything, right? That they can just detect. What I do like about the medical system is that they can save lives in an emergency or detect if your life is truly like in danger, right? If there's
if you break an arm, you want to go to the emergency room.
Yeah, acute care. It's important for acute care.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But part of that thing too, because so for me, again, it was like, the first step when we start to get sick is we go to our doctors, and of course they take the blood work, they do the blood tests, and it just goes to show you how again complicated it can get, how entwined it is. But my platelet counts would always be super high, like crazy high, and my white blood cell count would be super high. Now, I understand now why that was. I fully understand that. But from the doctor's perspective, she was just like, well, something is wrong. We don't know what it is, but something is wrong. I was so fearful around that I wanted the blood work done like every 6 months. I wanted to see on that. And when I started to see no changes, things were not moving for me. It put me into a farther place of fear around it.
Yes.
And it's like Cacey is saying, we have to work through that, because especially, and I've heard this in the medical medium community lots, when you start cleansing and flushing out all of this stuff, your blood test numbers can go like all over the place.
All over the place.
Absolutely. I remember
all
when
over
I
the
was
place.
first doing my flush, and I was first on that phase 1, I went to the doctor, and he's like, oh my God, your cholesterol is at like 9 or something like crazy. And I called Jodi, and I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And she's like, no, it's just your body's flushing. Like, it's finally moving and coming. It's flushing itself out. Give it some time. And she was very right about that.
And
whereas my doctor wanted to put me on medication.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's really a wild process, and that's why I always recommend the first people they need to address their fears. They need to find presence. They need to meditate, because just fear and these reactions, doctors, they can cause a lot of fear, right? But they'll say one thing and people just go spiral. It's like you guys are losing your sense of self. But I also remember what it was like too. And spirit is going to eventually lead everyone to facing their fears and learning how to find presence and love, because that's what we truly are. And it's when you're in that state, you realize the body can handle so much. When you are calm and you are relaxed and you are surrendered, your body can handle so much. So when you go to the doctor and you hear this, oh, your like your platelets are low, like, oh no, like this is gonna happen, right?
Right.
They first of all, doctors are just humans, right? They're not fortune tellers. They're not going to predict everything. So we don't have to.
And they're not channeling spirit.
We don't have to give so much
no,
power.
They're not doing that.
Right. They're not channeling spirit. We don't have to give so much power away to a test, to what they're saying.
Right.
We have that power. We have and let source guide us to what we need. And that's where we become empowered for what our body truly needs. And back to real quick on the medical medium and these symptoms, right? Is how do we know, like what virus, what's happening in our body is based off of the medical medium information, is spirit compassion telling us exactly what's happening in the body. We can just base off our symptoms, right? It'll tell you in Thyroid Healing book, there was a whole long list of symptoms that he describes and tells you what's the cause. And in Brain Saver, right, he tells you what's the cause. In Liver Rescue, he tells you what's the cause, right, based off of your symptoms. So I can diagnose people and tell them what's happening just based off of their symptoms.
Right.
And, so
and that's helpful, right? Because
they can find that in the books, right?
That's why I named the books. They're in the books. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Cacey, you work one-on-one with clients, right? You're a coach. Is that what you would call yourself now? You're doing.
Yeah, health practitioner, self-transformation coach, medical medium, detox coach. Yeah,
Yeah.
I that's what
So
I do.
much.
Yeah.
I've watched Casey kind of like from the beginning of his like, a public journey. And I love how he's expanding and changing because of course any good healer continues to heal. That's like we're never ever at the point where, yeah, I'm done. I'm good. I'm like, I got it all now, right? Like we're constantly because you know what? We're human beings and more stuff's gonna continually come up on our path. Like Casey's newly married. He's got a baby on the way. He's starting a new chapter that I'd love to tell you it's going to be filled with rainbows and unicorns.
Sure it is.
But
Jodi, don't
22
scare the
years
poor
old.
man.
Yeah, 22 years marriage and three children that are grown now. I know that it's you've got an exciting time coming up for you. But tell us, so for people who come to see you, Cacey, what's one of the big things that you find they struggle with the most? Like I always found there was a theme when clients would come to me, there'd be like this underlying theme that everybody kind of had. What do you think it is?
People living in fear of their symptoms is a huge one.
Yeah.
And struggling with the detoxification process, right, is a big one. A theme that I come on is just people who are highly reactive to the fruits and vegetables because they're so toxic and so viral, and experiencing the die-off like Leah was talking about, and the cleansing effect as your body purges poisons out and your liver
Anthony
has to
doesn't talk a
process.
lot about that, right? Like he doesn't
Yeah.
go into too much detail in the books, but
That's when you
and this
need the
is
support
another
the
reason
most.
why. Yes.
Yeah.
Another reason why, Cacey, I do feel like you're an empath is that I've heard you on numerous occasions say that you were like really sensitive to this supplement or this herb or right. So it can be scary when you start having like all of these sensitivities to this stuff coming up, right?
Yeah, it's a huge issue, and medical medium doesn't talk about it a lot. It is in his books and Cleanse to Heal and celery juice books. He talks a little bit about it, but I believe it's because he's talking to so many people, and a lot of people are not sensitive to. He doesn't want to scare people away. That's just my personal opinion. That's
Yeah,
not
and he doesn't
something.
want to put too much fear into it because, like,
Yeah,
right, for sure.
but it is a real thing, and I'm just fully authentic and truthful. Is like I I went through hell. Like I truly had to suffer. And I
Right.
knew
How
that going
long?
in. Like Spirit led me.
People are gonna ask, okay, when you talk about like suffer, like how long are these like suffer heavy
Well,
die-off
this
symptoms?
is dependent on, you'll never hear me
How
give
sick you are.
anybody, like it depends on how sick you are, how devoted you are, your mindset, your stress levels, your
Right.
setbacks, and how much cleansing you're doing. So it can be anywhere from 3 months where they'll start cleansing, then maybe have some die-off, some symptoms kick up from that, and after that they're not sensitive and they start feeling better. Like that is very common. It's also common for people that they can do all the fruits and vegetables, they start feeling better, they're taking the supplement herbs, they can handle them, and the deeper you go into cleansing, the more your body's nutrient absorption goes up, and the more toxins that you're releasing, the more sensitive you can become, because it's different layers. So it's so many different experiences. My experiences was sensitive in the beginning, still sensitive like throughout the whole time, like because I was the more toxic you are, the more pathogens you have, the more your liver's full. So when you go to create a die-off or create cleansing, you're releasing toxins into the bloodstream. There's not a lot of room for your liver to soak that up. So it sits in your bloodstream while your liver filters it out, like a little bit at a time. So when it's in your bloodstream, waiting in turn to get out of your body is when you can experience the detox reaction. So I focus a lot on that with my clients. And because what if, let's say we have these moms have 3 kids, or a dad who needs to work for his family and they have symptoms, but they're not bedbound, but they can still barely get by.
Right.
What happens when they start cleansing and then they have all of these
and they
things
feel
come up
worse.
that puts them into into feeling worse, and then they can't work and do that. So there has to be a way to balance, right? To balance that detox, right? You have to learn how to live intentionally based off what serves you and your life, creating a balance. So
I loved hearing you say that, because what I find often happens with, and I'm just going to, any kind of experts, is they have their protocol, they have their way of doing things, and they try and fit that on you, instead of listening and to what your true, like what your life is every single day, and what you can manage and what you can't. And I don't think until you can really listen to your clients and have that empathy and compassion for what the day is like from the moment they open their eyes to the moment they go to bed at night, and understand that, yeah, it's not my story that I'm trying to put on yours. We just push them through, and then they fall off and they don't want to do it. So the fact that you can hear their stories and then say, we're going to tweak the detox process so that you can still manage your life, is a really important thing for a lot of people.
Well, and I think, Cacey, part of the reason why, people like you and I, who we literally like had the worst possible, like we were dying and dark night of the soul and all of it, was so that we can show people, here are the stages of healing. This is what it looks like. And when you start doing the cleansing and following the protocols and doing that, you're probably going to feel like you're dying for a bit too. Like that was my experience. And I needed people like Cacey to say to me, that's completely normal. What you're going through, I went through that, and so much, because I don't want to hear from the healer that was like, yeah, you know what? I did medical medium for 6 months and all my symptoms disappeared.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And that's another common thing, is like, that's what they're focusing on. This person healed that, this person healed that. But like, you're not hearing the story that they went through though. Right.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't talk about it. I do all the time, because that was such a huge thing for me. And people need, God put my path in such a difficult way. Of course, it was for my highest ascension. Like I don't have much fear anymore, because of how much darkness I lived in, and just faced all of it full surrender. But I want people to know that the medical medium information, right, it is so safe. It is exactly what your body needs. And when you get those symptoms from making those changes, do not be fearful of them, because the problem is they can feel just like a flare up. But they're not. They're different. They're the poisons coming out of your body, and they're happening for a reason, because your body is so intelligent. The fruits and vegetables are so intelligent. They're working for you to push it out. Meet it with courage. Meet it with, I love my body. I trust my body. These are just poisons. You have to talk yourself through it. Like, I'm safe. This is safe. My body's cleansing, right? I fully trust the healing process, and that you lean into it. And all you need is that, does it resonate with you, right? As soon as, if it resonates with you, then that is your path, and you can go at the pace that you feel most comfortable with based off of your life and your situation. But the more that you push, the more courage you have, the more internal strength you get to want to heal. Go through the cleansing process. If you get those symptoms, go through it. Like, it's fine. Go ahead, push. You want to go through it? You want to get yourself healed quicker? You'll be okay. Rest your body. Distract yourself from it. Breathe, meditate, you will be okay, because they are filling your body with nutrients that you've been depleted with your entire life, and it's pushing out disease, and it needs to get out.
Right. And you literally can't go wrong. Like, this is it's that whole program. You literally could just eat bananas all day long. You could literally just eat potatoes all day long. We know this. And, for those of us who understand the vibrational frequency of everything, those are two big powerhouses that could literally just support you, right?
I will give people, the people struggling with the food diet and the food wars, here's the simplest way to look at it. And it's from just a logical thing and a spiritual thing. What is the one thing that we need more than anything if we have without, we will die?
Glucose.
No. Yeah, no. I'm talking about like quick. We'll die without it quick. It's oxygen. Right? Oxygen.
Yeah.
Where does that come from? Where does it come from?
There is no source because it comes from source of source.
It comes from earth. It comes from earth.
Yeah.
Oxygen, right? The earth
Yeah.
creates it, right? Oxygen, right? What's the next thing we need? Water.
Water. Yeah.
Where does it come from?
Earth.
It comes from earth, Mother
Yeah.
Earth. It comes straight from the earth. So our bodies are extremely adaptable, right? God created them strong. They'll adapt to survive and to work, but that doesn't mean that's optimal for living our best, healthiest
Right.
life,
Or enjoyable, right?
or enjoyable, right?
Yeah.
Or clear.
Right.
So where should we be getting our third thing that we need?
Obviously from the earth.
From the earth.
The earth. That's it. That's it. Fruits and
And
vegetables.
we follow
See,
it even
Casey's teaching
further.
us Science 101.
Like, it's
folks.
just simple. It's living
Yeah,
energy.
I'm like,
It's
yeah.
living fluids, right? That comes up through the soil, through the earth, and
Yeah.
through the vines, fills it with water and fiber and nutrients. And our bodies are 70% water, and it's
Right.
filled with living fluids, and that's what our body needs. And
So
that's
would you
just the,
consider yourself a vegan, Casey? Are you, if somebody said to you, are you a vegan?
yeah, absolutely. Because I did that blood type diet thing, and I'm like, oh, that plant-based thing is right. But it was learning that that's what was best. That's what medical medium. He doesn't say you need to be vegan, but I was just looking at it from a critical thinking. He never
Right.
recommends anything other than a fruit or a vegetable, or herb or a spice, right? It's
Right.
all plants. And so I wanted to be that, but also I awakened my heart like so much. Like, I truly wanted to become the best version of myself, and my suffering just ignited my heart wide open. And I'm do it for healing reasons and for moral and soul reasons too.
Yeah. So you're
I
all
love
in.
that. Yeah.
Fully
because I
vegan,
know-
yes, fully
Yeah.
vegan.
For
Yeah.
me, I know that
Yeah.
the one thing I loved about the medical medium was because I've been a vegetarian for a really long time and needed the push to go into being vegan. And that was very helpful. When
I
he
love though that
shared
because I'm still eating meat. I'm still not all the time, once a week,
It's okay, I
and I'm
still
very
eat dairy
clean.
sometimes, so
Like I'm very, very selective of what kind of meat I'm eating and how it's raised and humanity. I like all of that. But I loved with the medical medium that he was not like, you have to do everything like this or you're going to die.
yeah, no.
He never
Yeah,
comes
no,
out and
absolutely
says
not.
that, right? Like he never was like, and it's funny, Casey, maybe you can, like, when I first started healing with the protocols and the teachings, I joined all the groups, all the
Yeah.
groups. And they're a tough bunch. Like, God love them. They're like great, but they are, if you come on there and you say, oh, well, you know what? I had a chicken breast with my blah, 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 they'll be like all over you, right?
So no spirit of compassion in them? Is that what
Yeah.
we're saying?
Well, there's just
Isn't that
because
what he always quotes? Spirit of
just
compassion.
because, right, there a lot of people are focusing on the cleansing and the full spirit, but they're not truly diving deep to open their heart and to release the right judgment. And
Right.
it doesn't, like, not everyone needs to be perfect. If you are just making a little change, good for you. Pat yourself on the back, like,
Right.
Thank you.
celebrate
That's the
yourself,
message.
right? I always push people to go the farthest they can, to do the most, to do it, because
Right.
that's what's going to better your life. But spirit has people where they are, and it's not just the cleansing foods, but the real cause of problems on the planet is ego. It is judgment, right? And
Right.
judgment is the most toxic energy that there is, right? It doesn't
Right.
create, it's not from the heart, it's not from love, it's not from safety.
Right.
And this is a real problem that still people struggle with, and it's in the medical medium community. It's in most communities, and there's guilt and shame, all these things that are not
Absolutely.
addressed, that comes forward into how, like Jodi, like in the groups, it's like, well, I'm
Yeah.
doing this, but you're also taking your healing very seriously. And if you still want to have a piece of meat every now and then, and you feel that's best for you and where you're at, great. There's no judgment there. Like,
Yeah, and again, it's not the one size fits all. That's the thing that we have to
Exactly.
understand is everybody is on their kind of very unique, spiritual healing path. And when it's like Casey said about the books, when you're ready for things, like, will I at some point be totally vegan? I may, like that. My spiritual journey, my healing journey may take me there. Like I may reach a point with my physical body that it's like, I need to have no more meat. That may happen. But if, we have clients that we're working with or people that we're helping and they're not at that point, or they're not at the point where they can do celery juice every day or yada, yada, yada. I think a point that we need to make for everybody before we wrap this all up is that every single thing you are doing will make a difference. So whether it's the lemon water and ginger honey water in the morning, whether it's the removing fats all morning long and doing the cleanse, right? Like, Cacey, do you see that? It's anything that you can do that is it's going to change, right?
Absolutely. And that's why I on my Instagram page is where I channel most of the healing information. It's all of it, really. Is I talk about both spiritual and mindset and healing foods, right? And what's happening, because the spiritual needs to be number one, right? It needs to be, that's how you navigate your unique path, right? To find that peace and that love within yourself. Because I was suffering severely with symptoms, and I found pure joy when I was still not even healed and going through complete suffering. I found my light in the darkness.
Right.
And my journey was so severe, it was going to take me doing that work. So the people who are much sick, like really, really sick, like they have to do the spiritual and the cleansing foods, right? So many people are going to get benefits from each one, but the more sick you are, the more you have to integrate connection to the self and love and the cleansing process. So you have to meet yourself where you are and start, like Jodi said, start making any choices that are better for your healing, but you need to put one foot in front of the other and just take massive surrendered action, right? It's the action that's going to create the change.
And that's key. So hearing the word surrender, that's a big thing, because one of the things that we need to know is that we're not doing this on our own. So whether so Cacey, where do people, they can follow you on Instagram, right? There's your content that you give is like so educational, so purposeful, so heart-centered. Is that your main place for people to watch you at?
Yep. Instagram is Cacey, Cacey.Scott, Scott. That's it.
Perfect.
Yeah,
and then of course
that all over our
we'll share that, and the links will be in all of the podcast
Facebook
information
and stuff. Yeah.
And also know when you need that support, when you need that helping hand. Like, look at me, I had been in the wellness industry for, 20 years, as a teacher, as a guide, all of it. And I reached a point on my own healing journey where I needed help. I need help. You need somebody to just, whatever it is. So where do people reach out to you, Cacey, if they want to do some one-on-one? Because you still do one-on-one sessions, right?
I do. So you just go to my Instagram page and you just go to the link in my bio, and I have a link tree with lots of links. And up top, it says first time medical medium healing session. That's for people struggling with chronic symptoms, and they're looking to get more of what's understanding of what's happening in their body, what's causing their symptoms, and getting a food and supplement and herbal protocol that's right for them to get them on their path, right? To get them healing and involved into the cleansing process. And then there's a self-transformation session, which I mainly work with people around chronic symptoms and anything challenging in their life, learning to work through those challenges in a way that's going to serve their healing and connect them to their power.
And that's perfect. And I wanted to make sure that everybody understands that. So even if you're somebody who's not following medical medium, you're not on the protocols, you're not doing that stuff, but you have healing to have happen, you need to heal, whether it's spiritual, physical, whatever it is, Cacey is somebody who can offer you the support in that. So don't feel like, the judge under the lens, I don't even know who the MM is or Anthony Williams is. Just know that you are looking for some support. And I'm telling you, this is where Cacey shows up in a very heart-centered way, very humble, very, comfortable. You instantly, and I'm going to continue to help Cacey with this because he's an empath and he's connected and he channels and I don't think he knows any of that stuff yet, but it's
I was sitting here thinking the same thing, Jodi.
Source is using him. Source is using Cacey. It's flowing.
I know all of it.
Yeah.
I do. I definitely know.
Yes, and there's so much more. I'm so excited about where Cacey's going to expand and grow and reach more people, and that's the purpose of doing this, is the big reach, right? To spread the
Yeah.
love, to open the light for everybody. So,
Cacey,
Leah, do
will
you have
you
any
come
questions
back?
before we?
Yeah, will you come
Yes.
back,
Oh my
Cacey? I'm
God.
sure our audience will want to hear
We
again.
gotta
Maybe.
ramble more. Like
Yeah.
we gotta open up topics and ramble. I loved it. Yeah, I enjoy it so much.
Jodi and I are both ramblers, and we're both bringing in spirit, and we're both talk, and we don't realize it's spirit, so it's fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. Maybe we'll bring a third. We'll bring Cacey. He can be that male energy in the
I like
podcast.
it.
We'll
I
bring
like
him on
it.
as a regular to
I
come and
like
balance
it.
things out for us.
I
That's
like it.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And people are watching. They just need to know that they're on a spiritual path, right? You need to look at it as a path,
Right.
and start tuning in to start looking more for the opportunities, because the harder your path, the higher you rise. Like all this other
That's good to remember.
materialistic shit, all of this other materialistic stuff, like it doesn't matter at the end of the day. What matters is your soul's growth.
Mhm.
And the more serious you take that, the quicker you learn the lessons you're meant to learn, and you evolve out of your suffering.
And we're
Absolutely.
multidimensional. Spirit always reminds me that as human beings, we're multidimensional beings. So
Mhm.
we have to be working on all our layers, right? We can't just say, oh, I'm going to eat all the foods that make me better and then not look at our other stuff, right? And we can't be, I'm going to meditate for 2 hours a day, but I'm going to eat like ho-hos and ding-dongs. Like we have
Right.
to,
Yeah.
they always remind me we're multidimensional, and I think that that's a big part of what you offer, Cacey. So just thank you so much for being here today.
Yes, thank you, Cacey.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so much fun.
Awesome. Thanks. And thanks everybody for listening. And won't be the last you see of Cacey Scott on our show,
I
because
don't think
there's
so
many things
I
that
hope not.
we can explore together. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much. And we will catch you on our next show.
Wonderful.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Collective Soulversations. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and found it as enlightening and inspiring as we did. To keep up with our latest episodes, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. And if you liked what you heard today, please give us a like and leave a review. Your support helps us reach more listeners and continue bringing you meaningful discussions. If you have discussion ideas or guests you would like to hear us have a soulversation with, reach out at any time to our personal socials. You can find Jodi Jones on Facebook and Instagram, and me, Leah Exidia, at Cosmic Heart Intuitive Services in those same spaces. Looking forward to our next soulversation next week, sending you so much gratitude and love.